Well, thanks, Vandana, for joining us on the Next Matters Most podcast, where we talk about the future of business, entrepreneurship, and technology. And you had asked kind of earlier, like, what are we talking about? And I answered, I was like, well, no real agenda. Obviously, you're a, entrepreneur, business person, architect, designer, visionary. And so we just talk about sort of, your kind of skills, thoughts on design, thoughts on Durham, where we both happen to live, thoughts on sort of trends that you're seeing. I mean, I think because you're an architect, maybe you are uniquely positioned to weigh in on trends in sort of design around space and spaces and how we use and consume those. So I've got no real agenda, but I will say another funny little tidbit. I'm not really like a clutterer or whatever, someone who just hoards things forever, but like I've had this, like the Durham magazine that was like, and you're on the cover of it. It was from like 2 years ago, but it was like the like power women of Durham. And so every day when I go plug my computer in, because it's sort of on this shelf that I don't really use that much, I look at the Durham magazine, and there you are. So fun times. I was gonna, if I can grab it, I'll show it to everybody. No, it's under a vase. But maybe tell us your story. Yeah, how, what are you up to now, and go as far back as you'd like historically to, childhood and beyond. But I do love to ask people kind of about their story and their journey. I know you as a obviously leading architect. You've helped design many of the prominent kind of structures and buildings and spaces in Durham and the Triangle, as well as beyond. And you're also an investor, so you don't just do the work. You also kind of eat your own dog food, as it were. You live in a place that you designed. I know, I visited. It's great. It's amazing. And you just have a great sort of story, a long kind of standing history here in the city of Durham and the Triangle. But maybe just give me your 5-minute sort of overview, bio, elevator pitch, etc.
Sure. So thanks for having me, Nick. And it's really interesting. I turned 60 this year. I never thought I would see this year. 60 years seems like, oh my God. But 60s is like, oh my God, I'm 60, but I feel like 25. But going back, my story actually started maybe 68, 69 years back. My mom got married when she was 13. My dad was 6 years older than her. It was a arranged marriage. So, they had not seen each other till the day they got married. So and when I look at myself now, I have come such a long way in those 60 years. And I was born, and the first girl in the family, and everybody was kind of disappointed why I was not a boy. I'm from India. So, the whole cultural boy thing. And then my sister was born after 5 years, and it was like, oh my God, doom was all on our family, like 2 boys and no, 2 girls and no boys, and what's going to happen to this family. And during the same time, my dad got a scholarship. He had studied. My mom didn't get a chance to finish even her high school. And dad got a scholarship to go to Germany. And, he saw the Western culture. He's an engineer, and he was there for 3 years. And I think that changed a lot of his way of thinking. In terms of, education for women and making sure that everybody gets their fair rights and all that stuff. Very, modern values. So, he made sure, both of them made sure that we both were well educated. And, and I went to architecture college in India, and the story there is, we were just 5 architects, 5 girls amongst, 45 boys. And it was very, very difficult. But, there was no looking back. So, and then after that, I went to Dubai. I graduated in India, architecture, and then went to Dubai to continue working, was there for around 13 years, and then came to this country around 22 years back. And it's been great after that. It's just, from coming from that background of India, where women were not allowed to go to college or school, and where I am today, it just seems to me a whole different life at that point. And then just currently, in Durham, when I moved here to Durham and United States and North Carolina 22 years back, Durham was very, very different. There was not a soul, in Durham. And, all the buildings were boarded up. And it was really, really like a, battle zone, actually. We call it Fallujah at that point. It was almost like Fallujah. So, and nobody wanted to be here. I remember we were living in Chapel Hill at that time, and my dad had come over, my parents had come over for a visit, and just to drive from Chapel Hill to Durham, because our office was here, was almost like 35, 40 minutes one way. And Dad said it makes it makes no sense that you're spending an hour and a half of your day just commuting. You might as well move to Durham. And then it just seemed such a, like at that point, it just seemed such a wild idea. And then John and I both like, why not? Let's move to Durham. So we actually sold our house in Scarborough, Chapel Hill to move to Durham downtown, where there was not a soul here still. And it's been just amazing to see one building at a time, just picking up one building, changing one building at a time. Started with Rue Claire, and, we kind of bought that building, designed that building. And at that point, Rue Claire had that Papa, I think it was Pop's Pizza Place. And they bought into the vision of coming to downtown. And it just, after that, it was like one building, one restaurant, and it's been a great journey. And now what I see going on in Durham, it's like, wow, this is all these skyscrapers and tall buildings and apartment buildings, no place to park. It's like, wow, this is great. It is awesome. Yeah. It's been a great journey.
Yeah, that's great. And I feel, well, we've talked about this, but I turned 40 this year, so a different milestone, but still kind of a round number milestone. And, yeah, similar, maybe I had similar feelings where it's like, oh, that's not possible. I think I'm 25. But then you kind of look back, and yours is way more profound than mine because of where you grew up, but like kind of the concept of you, you overestimate what you'll get done or what will get done in 1 year, and you underestimate what will get done in 10. And, we've each, maybe a couple more, you've got me beat a little bit, but, as you stack on a couple of these 10s, profound change, right? So I think when I go back to, when I was 30, it's crazy when I was 20. Actually, I wonder if we saw each other in 99, if that was really 22 years ago. I was at Chapel Hill for undergrad. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so and what does that, hold for the future? So if you're, wow, like now you're helping contribute to a growth of a city, a community, there's skyscrapers, there's also thoughtful development going on here. And, when you were born, women didn't go to college, right? So like you've kind of, definitely kind of crossed the whole spectrum of kind of, cultural and evolution in that, and that's great. That's awesome. When you were you working? Did you just come here for business? I guess. Maybe for the business side, for a sec. You're a partner in like a world-class, architecture design firm. Was that what you just came? You just came here and just started that, or was it already started in Dubai, or did you come here and get a job and then start it?
Yeah. So it was already started here. John already had that business, and I joined him. And I think what attracted me to Durham was actually coming from Dubai. It was and this was just before Dubai had taken off. So there were no, Dubai was still like starting, but it had not really taken off. It had not exploded. And so what really attracted me was, just the drive from, coming from a desert to, this beautiful drive from the airport to Durham. The trees on the side was just amazing. But I came here I'd come here on vacation, and then I started getting interviews from all the different firms about joining them. And I really liked Durham because of the slower pace, and I was looking for something slower coming from Durham, and it just worked out perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. That's funny. I remember that exact time, like South Point Mall didn't even exist. And it was just, right. Trees everywhere. It was like, wow, this is great. And then you kind of open up in these little pockets. Yeah, like Durham, Chapel Hill. Raleigh was kind of a ghost town. Yeah. But interesting. And so, yeah, I guess where, what was the practice then, and where is it now?
So, yeah, 20 years back, I think not many people knew about interior architecture, which was, Alliance's, mine, John's, our strength. And that means basically not necessary big buildings, but how do buildings impact the interiors and how do people work and live inside and play inside? That is our main strength and focus. Like every space, whether it's home, whether it is, any place you go, really affects a person. So that is our focus, and I don't think there were many people practicing that kind of architecture. It was mostly either build a building or then there were interior decorators as such. But, to see a holistic picture about interiors and exteriors merging to form this really cohesive synergy, there were not many people. And I think it's changing now as Durham has exploded. And because of global, talent here and global companies coming, I think much larger world-renowned architectural design firms are moving into the region, and it's changing. But so, we've seen that change and growth in Durham and practices over the last 20 years, which has been just phenomenal.
That's great. Where was that? And I'll come back to that, but where were you guys relative to the industry at that time? Were there many people, I mean, maybe not in Durham or the Triangle, but like when you're in Dubai or India or other major metros looking at companies, were they focused on the interior architecture and it just hadn't taken on here, or was it?
I think it had started some,
okay,
but not really as focused as it is now, because I think at that point, I think it's maybe because of even the labor market, right? It was, I think today's world is more staff, and the well-being and the HR has come into the, picture. So people are more attentive towards a human, kind of experience. And earlier, I think in the 70s, 80s, 90s, it was more about, the practice was more about not so much about the person who's using the space, but the person the space is getting designed for. That means more like it's the more boss culture, versus the staff culture.
Yeah. And how do you, I mean, how do you kind of position yourself now that it is much more in the front and center minds of people as they look at spaces and companies? Whereas before maybe you were the first or really early to say, hey, we value this and we want to work with clients that also value it. And we know that this will be a trend of the future in terms of people and how they use and experience their physical space. But now that more people are kind of hip to that, right? Because it's a staff first and there's so much to do there and to unpack there, like how we, kind of interact with each other, how we make it thoughtful, create little places for rest and relaxation and recovery and just to get the most out of our day, not necessarily the most productivity, but also just enjoy our time at work. But I guess how do you now and do you have to, right? I guess maybe you don't because you've got such a brand and a reputation, but what do you do to kind of work to continue to differentiate yourself now that others value this as well?
Really good point, Nick. I think where we really differentiate with other, from others is we are very heavy into development now. That means we own buildings, we are, renovating buildings. And that puts us in a very different league because it is our own funds, it is our own asset. So we tend to be very mindful of, financially very conservative and smart. Also, because it's our own funds, we, we want to make sure that we are spending it wisely and making that wow and the create, that awesome environment in a very synchronized and succinct way and very targeted actually, which is like very laser sharp, very focused. And that's really because of our own developments that we have become very, very good at that. So we are very mindful of budgets and time, that's the two things.
Yep. Yeah. And I kind of mentioned that at the outset of kind of eat your own dog food concept, right? Like, so you build spaces for yourself.
Correct.
I wasn't asking that question that, elegantly, but I was trying to tease that out, right? Meaning you're kind of, you think, I know that you guys think well beyond the space, and maybe everyone does, or it's a best practice, or they at least should, but I still think it's unique from the untrained eye that, I mean, a lot of times if I'm talking with you or with John, we're talking about our neighbors and people 2 doors down, 3 doors down, 4 blocks down. What will the community want? And we're kind of zooming out well past just like what's the walking flow of foot traffic to seating to other arrangements and dividers and nooks and whatnot. We're thinking really, really big picture. And I'm sure, was that sort of something that was always a part of your trade, or did that kind of come as you started to do more development work where you're like, wait a minute, I do have to think kind of about the whole ecosystem and how my asset will impact the greater good of this ecosystem? Because if it does, it's a win-win, right? It's not just about my own return. If I help the others and there's synergies and there's cohesiveness, then the whole area will get the attention and the traffic or whatever the outcome that you are seeking to accomplish.
So I think, most of the times whenever we look at a space or whenever we get a new project, we always think about it like, so when you go to a city, whether it's New York or Manhattan or Chicago, wherever, you always kind of look at different, you have a great experience, whether it is you're in awe of a place or there is a quiet area, or something really energizes you. So that's one thing that we're looking at all the, whenever we are like thinking of spaces. But I think more than that, I think it's the storytelling. We do not, we are very good at trying to figure out what is a story. What is it that we're trying to convey? If we capture that well in the beginning, the journey starts from there versus just a design space, so that going back to your comments about what is a story, it's going to have an impact on your inner, your space in the community, in the region, and how are people going to interact at all those different levels. And I think they're very good at that, trying to figure out, what that is.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, I think, I love all of our kind of convos and working together because they're kind of similar. I mean, I feel like a lot of similarities in my own sort of professional life too, which is, something that we were doing early on was kind of on trend, building some web 2.0 software, right? Not fast, nimble, we could work with startups. But now that's like literally every business is a startup or has some sort of, we're a tech business that sells shoes or we're whatever.
Yeah.
And so just the thing that our skill that we did isn't new, and how have we sort of evolved and adapted over time, either as that company or those companies or as individuals. And, again, also we try to eat our own dog food. We try to invest into development and building IP and products. And so, but then in doing so, it does force you to think, like outside the box. It also gives you the empathy for your future clients, right? Because they can see like, well, I'm doing this and it's forced me to think differently about the business value and the entrepreneurial journey. And so I think that's sort of I always talk about like flywheels, and I hope I create a business flywheel where it just keeps going and going and going. But that's actually, I've already created this knowledge flywheel, which is I do my own projects, which helps me do a better job for your project as a client. And doing your project as a client helps me learn stuff to do better for my own projects. And I love that sort of constant circle of feedback and knowledge. But also, ecosystem thinking is just, to me, I don't know, kind of it's bigger than any sort of individual like business or venture or company type or industry type, right? And like, I think you guys bring in stuff that's way bigger than architecture or my business use case for my space. We are thinking about, the word is used a lot, like community though, right? We're thinking about the community. We're thinking about the ecosystem. We need to find words that aren't as buzzy, but, or used, but that's like a powerful thing. I guess, where's the source for that, right? Like, what's your drive? Is it just to maximize the return on the buildings you bought? Or why are you guys so kind of passionate about, putting kind of that higher level ecosystem and community focus on all your projects?
So that's a really good point, Nick. And I think So we both, John and I, very, very, very strongly believe that we cannot be successful till everybody is successful. And that's a very strong belief we've had. And one of the things that we really, our next phases in our lives are that we want to make sure in Durham there is a very good system in education. I think we all know that that really needs help. And, I've talked to some of the leadership in Durham, like, how do we make sure, that, everybody's successful. It's not a very complicated problem, but somehow it's not on everybody's radar. Just my success is not enough. I want my neighbor, my community, my ecosystem all to be successful so we can all be successful. But I just want to step back a little. One of the things that I'm finding very intriguing is a lot of times people jump into a solution, finding a solution without even figuring out what the problem they're trying to solve. And that's when I think whenever, we're designing or whenever we come across a new project, before jumping into a solution, we always kind of step back, have people step back in any relation, in any project, in anything, whether you're designing a house or an office, a total huge milk renovation, like, what are we trying to solve? And I think that, once everybody comes on the same page about what is the problem, then it's easy to solve, but without that, it's just hard to, the solution is not good enough.
Yep. And what's the percentage breakdown of kind of how you see your like business between development and client work?
I think it's like 50-50.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
Is
it's not so. Earlier, the client work was mostly 90-95%. And over the last 20 years, as I said, I think it's stronger, as we develop, and, it's a whole different mindset, and it's really successful and it's awesome. Yeah.
Is that a natural evolution for a services firm? I just said we're in services and we're kind of trying to do that and are doing it to some degree of success. It's definitely not 50-50. Well, sometimes the labor and resources might be split 50-50, but the revenue certainly isn't yet.
Yeah.
But is that a natural evolution, or is it something that you just have, kind of gone as an outlier?
I think it's definitely not natural. It's a conscious decision that, from architecture to development, that's what we wanted to do, because I mean, we're both control freaks. I am totally a control freak, so I rather, control my environment and, my buildings, and our development, so I think that was part of it. But, and it's also, sometimes it's easier to work on your own projects than, deal with people.
Do you see it going to 100% development, 0% client work, or is there always just a place for clients and, the challenge and the kind of uniqueness and the whatever? What do you think about that
That's interesting. I definitely see, I think I definitely see client work, because there are some really interesting projects. And what really kind of jazzes us up is a problem that is new, a different problem, a new problem. So, it's something unique, something different. I mean, I would love to design prisons. I've never had a chance to do that yet. And I was so intrigued when a colleague said about, hey, let's design prisons, and which is so not in my forte at all. I can't even imagine where to start from. But I think, bringing some empathy, bringing some, goodness, and bringing some humaneness in how we treat people would be nice. So, yeah. So I think I can definitely see, I definitely think there will be always some client work, but I think we're slowly going to move to more, development.
Yeah. No, I think I feel the same way, right? Like that new challenge is a new problem.
Yeah.
And it's like always learning and it's growth. And I get excited by projects. If I had no business or businesses, I'd still have 3 or 4 businesses or projects or
Exactly.
whatever, whether they were for myself or with others, whether someone was paying me or I was just hoping for something on the back end of it.
Yeah.
It's just fun. And have you ever thought about like, well, this is a weird question. Have you ever thought about quitting? You know, like, do you ever just kind of, you're like, gosh, I mean, you've thought about all the things, or is there always a new challenge? Or because you said your next step is, kind of success for all, kind of starting with, education and some of the building blocks, right? That sort of doesn't have anything to do with architecture. Have you ever just been like, man, I need to go find some more purpose? Well, actually, I'm projecting on you, maybe a little bit, which is like, what's my purpose? So sorry for that, but yeah, have you? Where are you at with
It's
that? Obviously, because you're
it's
so
so
talented,
weird.
like, you're higher thinking, you're a higher level thinker.
It's so weird that you asking me this because I don't know if I mean, did we ever talk about this? Because I don't think
No.
it's so strange you're asking me. Um, I have been thinking a lot actually. And this morning I was talking to my nephew who I'd love you to meet. He's 25, he's in India. He's completely mesmerized by Grant Cardone. So he wants to come over and meet Grant Cardone in Florida. And so we just started bantering. Hey, you can buy these apartment buildings. I will buy the Everglades, and his wife, who's 25 years old, she can start farming alligators. And it was just like so random and totally out of context. But going back to, the higher purpose. So I am very, very, I am very, I'm very deeply involved and want to make sure that women are successful, especially because of the country that I came from, where it was very different. At that time, women did not get education. And even today, how it's so easy to say no to a woman and it's not possible for a woman. I've been to Africa many times and seen situations there. I've seen, in Dubai, how women were treated. So my next 5 years goal is actually, I want to spend 6 months traveling and go to countries where I can, be with girls and tell them, hey, it's possible. Just say yes, and it's possible. And, I thought it's very easy to start from India and Africa because both these countries, you can just hold somebody's hand, and just say, don't worry, it'll be all okay. It's possible. Just do it. But I want to start with maybe Scandinavian countries where I can learn a little more. And then, world is all open. So I want to go to Africa. I want to go to India. I want to go back to South America and then maybe Southeast Asia somewhere.
Yep.
So that's my next 5 years.
That's great. I don't know why I asked that. I don't think we've talked about that, but it's easy to kind of, even as you get excited about the ideas, and I love the prison, right? I mean, I'm glad you said, I just want to go to jail. Like, oh, wait, what? No, well, then I don't do that. But I mean, right. But designing prisons and thinking of the impact that could really have on a human level, right? As we think about experience, as we think about kind of, recidivism, are these things that all of a sudden can encourage just different outcomes. I don't even know how, right? But as you explore that, I'm sure there are ways that thoughtful design, spaces, and placemaking, and it can apply to the prison system and whatnot. So but even as that, challenges like that are great, and then you get into it and you're passionate about it, but then you're like, okay, on to the next, or my developments, or my whatever. And at some point for me, there's always kind of like a little question of like, all right, what's the point? Like, why did I mean, even I was like last week, I'm starting coming into work, and I'm like, why did I even become an entrepreneur? Was it just free time or like to be my own boss? Was it so I could like not work if I didn't want to? Was it to get money? Was it to, I don't know, make my own schedule? I just, sometimes I kind of like, you kind of lose track of that. And you're like, how high up the ladder do I go in terms of where my purpose is, and like which thing gets me sort of like that kind of thing that I'm really excited about? Because as you get more experience, as we both know, you do see a lot at the same time. Like, oh, I'm really excited about my business. Like, well, yeah, no shit, right? So let's do a great job and change the world by digitizing, books and turning them into audio books, whatever, whatever that little thingy is of the day. And they're very rarely life-changing. You've actually kind of gone the opposite direction. So I want to impact people one one by one by one. And then if they can impact others, then you can kind of be a force multiplier there, but not, but going the inverse, not like, oh, I want to just like give talks or write a book. I want to go places and be there on boots on the ground. And you have a clear thought of what that is. So I'm pretty envious because I kind of haven't found that thing. And I don't know if that's a next chapter sort of thing or just always kind of revisit, what's your why? And also revisit what's your why, right? Maybe it's just because like you do want to think about family or think about, community and knowing that even working your job and responding to customer emails still serves those whys, even though it doesn't feel like it sometimes, right? So I think that's interesting. Do you ever feel like, have you thought about doing development outside of this market, or do you already, or is it kind of like, our area, so you focus here, or are you ever like, I know our area, it's kind of, I know all the inventory and now I need to get.
So we have looked at other places. We've looked at India also some.
Oh, wow.
Think for development, I think it's important for us that the development is happening, or we are interested in development where we are, like the proximity to the space is important to us.
Mhm.
And also we don't want to spread too thin because we're control freaks. But going back on something else, Nick, is, I started climbing mountains like 3 years or 4 years back. It seems like 2017. And I did Kilimanjaro. That was my first hike ever. And, I had never done anything physical before that, but it was great. And I've got the bug in me there now. So I did the Everest Base Camp the next year. And what I realized was, the only thing matters in life is yourself, and if you take care of yourself and take care of your emotions, spirits, physical, that's the only thing that matters, and everything else will follow. And, that's the last thing we ever pay attention to. We always do others, the clients come, the family, the husband, the wife, the children, and yourself, you keep it for the end, and that end never comes, and it's just too late.
Or it comes faster than you think. And,
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah. And I don't even know anything about this, but people know about it because I've been talking about it, and I only know about it because you mentioned it. But I mean, you invest in yourself and self-care, including like, I think it was a happiness retreat, right? And that sounded
Yeah,
fun.
totally.
I'm still waiting for that link, right? I want to go on that myself, but I
Yeah,
just
I
mentioned the
should.
word
You should.
happiness retreat and everyone's like, I need that, right? Because it is, dude, I mean, I'm actually very, again, envious and sort of happy for you that you've sort of, when did you find that realization that, taking care of yourself is sort of the priority? Because if you take care of yourself, then you'll be much better at helping and just doing whatever, helping others, taking care of others. But yeah, when did that?
So this happened. So um, elections happened, not this election, the elections before that. And I was really devastated. And I had no idea. I was like, I could have gone into depression. It was so bad. But coming from India, we do not believe in depression. We do not believe in mental health. We do not believe in, counseling and none of that. I've never had access to any of that. So I had no idea how to go about it. And I started, that's when I said yes to Kilimanjaro. And I had never done anything like that before. That's when I realized that, nobody's going to do anything for you but your body. And sometimes even the body will not, be with you. And every day, Nick, when I was hiking, in the morning, I would, request my knees and my heart that, guys, I need your support today. And after the end of the hike, I would come back and give them a massage, my heart and my knees, and say thank you. And once we do this, when we finish this journey, I'm going to give you a treat. And after we finished the hike, I, gave my knees and myself a good massage. So it was just then. And after like 5 years later, I'm still very focused that I have to take care of myself to take care of everything else around me.
Yeah. So that didn't just, yeah, that's a big, important part. And you didn't know it early on, right? It took you a while. It took you to kind of a moment. when that was going on and you're kind of feeling like the dark cloud, did you realize, like, did it dawn on you that like maybe that's been around for like a while, and maybe was it before sort of like, oh, the kind of election, which impacted a lot of people, but were you like, oh wait, now that I'm identifying that, I actually now realize that this has been around since last year or for years, or was it really just that kind of, you were just like rolling until you just got knocked back by that sort of, kind of geopolitical or of the election?
No, I think it was there for a while, right? It just doesn't, nothing happens just suddenly, and you see things around in your environment and you just wonder, or each one of us sees everything, around in our environment. And we just wonder why, why is it so unfair? Why does it happen? And there is just no response. And you feel so helpless because you can't do anything a lot of times, or you do not know where to start from too. So it's nothing that happens. I don't believe that it happens suddenly. It just builds up, and but that moment for me was like, it was totally wake up call. I could have gone many, many other ways, but thank God, I had the strength in me to pick myself up and do this route.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a real inspiration. What do you do now? I mean, do you follow any sort of routine, or you just kind of listen and you have more awareness and kind of take a trip every so often? Or do you have like maybe a routine, a daily, weekly, monthly, sort of ritual?
So I do, I do work out, a couple of thrice or four times, day, a week. And I try and, at least twice a month, weekend, I try and do, a hike. And, the good news about Durham is we're so close to the mountains as well as the beach, and, nice hikes. You can do day trips, you can do weekend trips. And just to see the color out, just to see it was beautiful. Last weekend we were in Outer Banks and it was beautiful and cold, but it was so beautiful, the color changing, and the blue sky and the blue mountain, like the waves, it was just amazing. So I think exposing ourselves to nature is so important and so critical, and seeing the flower, I also do a lot of gardening on the roof. We have a roof garden. You've seen that. So just seeing the seasons change, and be aware of it. Otherwise, just life just passes by, and we don't even stop it. We're running from one meeting, one Zoom call, one thing to the other. And, it's just time passes by so fast.
Yep. Well, again, yeah, I mean, I think that's, a sort of I don't know, that's kind of an experience share that is valuable for many. I mean, there's so much here, right? Kind of continuing to look for, that, refined why, or how it's evolved over time. Do you know, I mean, do you know what it was like driving you earlier in your career? Maybe not in Dubai, but maybe once you got to Durham, the first 5 years, was it Durham growth? I mean, obviously it still might've been seeing more the growth and evolution of the role of women in society and education and business. But, I'm assuming it was maybe more like, it wasn't as profound, and you've gained, you've refined it over time. But do you recall kind of what was driving you back then?
Yeah, I think so. That's really, I love, your questions, Nick. I think initially it was to me that the very newness of America. So that was the first time I came to America, right? So it was so different than India. It was so different than Dubai. So the first 5 years was, okay, this is different, and it's got its challenges, it's a very isolated society, whereas India is very family oriented, very, everybody's in your face constantly. And here you can drive for miles and not see anybody. You can't just, drop in for tea, you have to take an appointment to meet your friends. So all this first 5 years was, kind of figuring that out. And then the next 5 years was, okay, now I have figured this out. How do I take it to the next step? And now it's just like, what the amazing thing about this country is the freedom it gives you to do whatever you want. So no complaints, right? You can do whatever you want and nobody will stop you. So that's been really, really freeing in a way.
Yep. It's so interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of, there's just different things kind of through different, stages. And I mean, I guess two things. One is, yeah, the kind of realization that you need self-care. It can't come soon enough for all of us, right? Like I I mean, even now, as I kind of look back in the last 5 or 6 years, I'm kind of like, what was I even doing? Like, what was motivating me? Like sitting in my yard or whatever, like, and like, I don't, playing outside or like watching like Sunday, like football, like they
Football,
were
yeah.
just time like wasters. And I feel like they were just like distractions, and maybe I was just like, oh, I just want to distract myself. Like work weekend is leisure and work is week. And I don't know, it just didn't, for some reason now I'm kind of like searching for like, what's like, where do you get fulfillment from and find that purpose and, and what's versus what's just another shiny thing. Cause you're like, oh, I'm going to go to, India or Africa. I was like, oh yeah, shoot, I want to go too. Like take me and let's build something there, right? I love the idea. The builders are builders, architects are architects, but we're
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
different, right? I mean, I think you're a developer, I'm a developer, we're businessy people, but we're also
yeah,
like community focused. So it's really about like what can we do from a programming and community and empowerment and an investment thing and make it an
yeah,
investment to a place that wants it, can benefit from it, and values it, where we're making an outsized impact, and so I think kind of having an outsized impact feels good. But I'd love to do that, but I'm like, well, but is that just another thing? Am I just like, am I low on dopamine, right? And I'm trying to just like, God, get that next thing, like a bigger thing. So I'm kind of on that sort of journey as well, like even right now, right? It's sort of like, well, what am I doing and why? Like why, and what's the next thing? What's the thing that gets me excited and gets me motivated? And self-care, right? Like how do I find that time and space? And you're doing it. So I mean, congratulations. We're all kind of maybe, well, everyone can take a page from that book. And you've also sort of done a great job of dialing in that next thing. And I think that's kind of it can be elusive, at least in my experience. But yeah, that's it. Yeah, so you were in '99. I mean, well, I guess we've been your client like I think 3 times, and now with our
yeah,
Sanford project would be the fourth time. So
yeah,
kind of the
yeah,
Underground, Diamond View 3, Ramsar Street,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
now Sanford, the Singer Building.
yeah, yeah.
And it's been, yeah, and it's like, and
It's
I
been a
see kind
great
of how,
journey, Nick. I mean,
yeah, yeah. Well, you guys are leaders in this kind of community in terms of, I mean, I don't know how much you like talk to like politicians or how much politicians matter, or if you just sort of, do things with your actions by buying things that need improvement and leading with, great design and showing people what's possible. But like, that's been made, that's happened, I mean, really in large part because of what you and John have done here. And then also, you've extended yourself because you also then have clients. So now we've got spaces that we can show that are, you know, models for what others should do and how they should think about kind of space design. Do you have any thoughts on kind of like where space design is going? I mean, I know we kind of went from like the whole individual, personal, spiritual journey to maybe back to a little bit more tactical work-wise, but I mean, I think our
yeah,
space is important, right? That's sort of, if you're thinking about yourself and self-care, that's impacting you most minutes of most days, right? Whether it's your home space or your workspace. But what have you seen that's changed? And I mean, like, everyone's read like, oh, Parade of Homes, there's like a more work from home space, like, oh, what a great post-pandemic trend, right? That's a little obvious, but what have you seen that's a more kind of, in your wheelhouse in terms of the commercial interior space?
So I think so obviously, everybody knows COVID has really changed a lot, like the way we've been thinking, doing anything. Um, and what I've seen now that's happening is, I mean, we're still we are still in a very undecided way about what's going to happen in the future. But we are seeing that people are very clear that they do not, even if they have all the opportunity to come back, because people have learned how to work from home and save that commute time. People are still opting to work at least in a hybrid way, that they want to come back to work for the socialization or for the meeting part of it. But, the heads down work they would still like to do from home. That's one thing. Or if you're getting disturbed at home, then people want to come back and, do the heads down work in the office, totally depending on the environment. And I think people are, you know, because a lot of times people are taking care of themselves and they are thinking about self-care. So, the environment around them, they want it healthier. So, more ergonomic desks, more inside outside spaces, more fresh air, more landscaping. Um, People are also tending towards because of the healthcare and because of the self-awareness thing, that people are looking for more natural materials, natural products, more natural lighting, LEDs, and natural um, color temperatures versus, the 70s, 80s, 90s, where we had fluorescence and the white light and all that stuff. So I think people are becoming very aware of that. And anything that will, a lot of warm, comfortable feeling, furniture wise versus starkness. I think that's going to be a trend for a while. What I'm afraid of is that, trends, if it's not natural, they don't last for too long. And that's what I'm, afraid that I hope this is not a trend, wise, sensible thing to do, and it'll last longer versus, it's just, buying furniture from pottery. And I'm nothing against Pottery Barn, but, you don't want to make it look too homey either. It's it's a work environment. It's your workspace.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think getting beyond, well, it's like the kind of your gardening comment and stopping to smell the roses, I guess is a metaphor or whatever, but it's actually real, right? So stop, take time. And that's how, I mean, we haven't thought about it from a space design, but it's more about how are we thinking about designing our business for sustainability and resilience.
Yes.
Now, resilience is already a word that people are hate because resilience, I'm sick of hearing that word. But it just means like, how do we have more slack in the line, right? How do we have a little bit more space individually, more comfortable, whether it's around deadlines or expectations. What are we giving up for that? I don't know. Is it profits? It shouldn't be quality. Is it timelines? Like, I don't know. But without that, we're one sort of random speed bump away from kind of just having mental overload and kind of continuing the kind of mental health spiral that's kind of, it's been out there. Well, pandemic sort of highlighted it, put a spotlight on it, and it worsened it, but it was there before. It just wasn't as, as high as called out as it should have been. But yeah, I mean, I think that's an important thing to kind of consider is how do we make this part of our day and our journey the most enjoyable it is? It should be, I kind of have thoughts on like work-life balance, right? Like, isn't it just life? Should be, right? I hope that people, I'm happy that, I hope people can find things that they enjoy. So it is just part of life, right? I mean, it's just a part of the kind of journey that we're on. And we spend time doing different things throughout the day that have various outputs and goals. And it's all just kind of one big, pie that we're optimizing for.
What do you think about the word responsibility? It's like, taking responsibility for your, somehow I feel like, responsibility for yourself, your well-being, a responsibility for the work that you're assigned to do, or something that I think that was lacking for a long time, that it became 9 to 5, and 40 hours work, and people are struggling. I mean, I think if we can take away some of this and give people the freedom, a lot of other countries are successful by not doing a 40 hours, 35 hour, 36 hour. If people need more time, for themselves and their family. I don't know. I'm just.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to innovate there. I mean, we don't use the word responsibility, we use the word accountability. So I mean, if it's what we're accountable for is clear, then we should all have alignment and life should be easier, because it's just known and you just get it done. And how do we manage expectations? But I mean, how do we manage things by the outcome versus by the hour? I've never really managed my time, and sometimes, I mean, I'm sure I'm always, I'm always working, but it's because I like it. But it doesn't mean it's always working. Sometimes I'm just like talking to my kids about like Bitcoin and looking at investing, and it's like, well, that's kind of work, because I'm trying to manage my business treasury or whatever, right? But it's like I find joy in those things. But I mean, I'm inspired to kind of go find some more space for myself. Actually, I would need to go. Did you do the Kilimanjaro? Well, obviously you weren't by yourself. I mean, you had guides and others, but that was kind of a singular journey. Or did you have other friends and colleagues that doing it with you, or were you just kind of training for yourself and you went out there?
No. We were 8 of us hiking. So actually, you should come on one of these trips we do. So the last one I had done was Machu Picchu 2 years back.
Yeah.
Trail. And then in January end, I'm planning to go to do these 4-day hikes in Ecuador. But after that, let's see,
Yeah.
I mean, Fuji one day.
Yeah, I know my wife loves my business career and all my little projects like this podcast. I don't think she actually listens to it. But if she did, she would laugh her ass off right now. She knows I kind of hate hiking. But I don't know if I really mean that, right? I've always said, like, I will hike and camp, right? Like, if we're getting to a destination, I'm like I guess like a very basic dog, right? Like, if you just give me a purpose, get there, I'll go. But if it's just like, let's park on the side of the road and kind of like walk for 2 hours and walk back to the car, I'm like, we could have just gone, we could have taken the gondola up or something and like got the same views and then just like worked out at the gym for 45 minutes for the same, we could accomplish different purposes in different ways. But I'd love to. I mean, I like the kind of idea of it's sort of, in that isolation, but sort of like, you kind of have a goal that you're working on that's your own and you're training for it or you're planning for it. And even when you're practicing, you go on, here, like lower stakes, but getting out there by yourself just sounds good for kind of the headspace reason alone, right? Just getting mind space, getting separation from all those things that aren't yourself. And I'm feeling that. I feel very like motivated now. I'm like, all right, I've got a lot of work to do. I've got a meeting in 1 minute. I'm probably late actually.
Yeah.
But I was like, wait, no, I gotta that's not today, right? I've already got my calendar, but tomorrow, the next day, next week, right? Holidays. How do we kind of set those goals? Well, I'm great. I'm so glad we did this. And I could talk for hours with you, or I
do need a commitment from you. One day before it's too late, we're going to do Mount Fuji together.
Okay.